have us another contender for the upcoming Huge Embarrassing Failure Awards. For the first time ever, I think we have got a contender who's got the ability to take the crown from Bomani Jones. Bomani Jones, he has become so synonymous with failure, it's not even fun to talk about him anymore. I am sure my long-term subscribers have noticed that I rarely mention Bomani Jones anymore here on the channel. You know how sometimes in sports, dynasties, they can get a bit boring? Unless you're like a fan of the team, it can get old watching the same team consistently win championships. Same thing with Bomani Jones when it comes to huge embarrassing failures. Over the last couple of years, there have been plenty of worthy contenders who have come along trying to dethrone Bomani Jones. Donnie and his Lemons, Chris Cuomo, hey, it's me, Chrissy C. The entire network at CNN, Tiffany Cross, better known here on the channel as Tiffer the Bongo Sniffer, Max Kellerman, the list goes on and on. The failure of Bomani Jones, it has defeated all contenders. But we have a new number one contender, and I am being dead serious when I tell you this. This contender has what it takes to dethrone the Bobo. This will be the toughest fight of his career. Matter of fact, this is the first time that Bomani Jones is going to go into a competition of failure as the underdog. You would be hard-pressed to find a more consistent run of huge embarrassing failures than the recent career of Jemele Hill. Oh, smelly Jemele. The woman with a face that always looked like she smelled the fresh flatulence of the whoopee cushion. I mean, look at this pretty face. Look at that face. Jemele, I love you. I love a woman who knows how to fail. I actually have a lot of faith in Jemele Hill. My money is on her to win the Hef Awards. I don't know how many times I have said this over the last couple of years. With over 40 videos uploaded every week, or every month I should say, I would be willing to bet I have said this hundreds of times over the last couple of years. Sympathy can only take you so far. There may be times in your life where you can play on people's sympathies, play on their emotions, and that will get you in the door. Doesn't matter how you get inside. The only thing that matters is what you do once you're in there. When a company is paying you hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dollars, in the case of Jemele Hill, when a company is paying you that kind of money, they expect you to produce. They expect results. Oftentimes, I will mention random shitfucks collecting woke welfare. That is not a joke. That is not satire. Woke welfare is real. Over the last couple of years, we have seen various media outlets hand out millions of dollars to unqualified people based on their perceived victim status. Oh, he was born into systemic racism. Pay him millions in reparations. She is a triple victim. She belongs to 3 marginalized groups. Minority, woman, with a wiener. Pay him or her millions. If you are a beneficiary of woke welfare, there is going to come a point where there are no more excuses to be made. There will come a point where a company is bleeding so much money, they will no longer be afraid of the potential backlash when they fire your ass. Unfortunately for Jemele Hill, Spotify has reached that point. Bloomberg, they published a report yesterday announcing the divorce between Spotify and Jemele Hill. Now, of course, Bloomberg, they framed the departure as Jemele Hill has decided to leave Spotify. Yeah, sure. I'm not biting into that shit sandwich. I have yet to meet the woke welfare recipient who calls up the bosses and says, I want you to stop paying me millions of dollars that I have not earned. Now, to be fair, it is entirely possible that Jemele Hill made this decision on her own. I just don't think so. Spotify is refusing to comment on the story. I think they're allowing this narrative to be framed to save face. It allows the public to believe Jemele Hill is walking away of her own volition. It's a win-win. Think about it. Spotify doesn't face any backlash for firing someone belonging to multiple marginalized groups. Jemele Hill gets to pretend that she is walking away to pursue bigger opportunities. They can frame whatever narrative they want. At the end of the day, the divorce between Spotify and Jemele Hill came down to one thing. It's the most common reason given for a divorce: money. Jemele Hill, she was making money. Spotify was losing money. God only knows how much money Spotify spent promoting Jemele Hill. She was often listed on the front page of their website, advertisements on social media. Join Spotify to gain exclusive access to Jemele Hill is Unbothered. Quite the ironic name for a podcast, since Jemele Hill is literally bothered by everything. Grilled woke wiener is too big for the buns. Jemele Hill is bothered. Target out of stock on 69-volt batteries. Jemele Hill is bothered. Blue Cross Blue Shield refuses to pay for gender-affirming care for her non-binary pet walrus. Jemele Hill is bothered. Spotify pays Joe Rogan $200 million. Jemele Hill definitely bothered. Last year, the New York Times, they interviewed Smelly Jemele and her pungent fragrance. My inside sources tell me the interviewer came prepared with the triple Fauci mask. The smell of Jemele was so strong, it burned a hole through the center of the mask. Now, the hole was perfectly placed for a game of spin the woke wiener, but that was not the purpose of this interview. The New York Times, they caught Jemele Hill on one of the 365 days every year that she is bothered. On this particular day, though, she was upset because Spotify was paying Joe Rogan so much money. She told the New York Times, if Spotify is giving this money to the evil white man, they must also give the same amount to a black person. That is the true definition of equity. What Jemele Hill and other exploiters of mythical racism are rapidly figuring out, there is no such thing as equity in the world of business. There is a reason Spotify breaks the bank for Joe Rogan. He's not just the #1 podcaster in the country. Outside of the NFL, Joe Rogan has the largest audience across all media platforms. He is delivering tens of millions of listeners to the platform every week. How was Jemele Hill performing? With the constant promotion, the weekly features on the front page, where do you think Jemele Hill ranks? Well, KC, at minimum, she's in the top 100. You're not even close. Top 150? Nope. Top 175? Nope. Top 200? Nope. Jemele Hill is easily beaten by a podcast called Barely Famous, hosted by one of those former teen moms on MTV who haven't been teenagers in like 15 years. She's beaten by something called Suburb Talks. I scrolled through the entirety of the Spotify charts. I never found Jemele Hill. Now, the shitfucks, they are going their usual route, trying to claim Spotify is plagued with mythical racism. According to Bloomberg, Spotify created a creator equity fund. They set aside $100 million with the intent to donate the money to content creators belonging to marginalized groups. During the first year of the fund's existence, Spotify only allocated 10% of the money. Why? If you believe the wanker spankers, it's mythical racism, damn it! If you believe logic and reason, Spotify was not seeing a return on their investment of that $10 million, so they just stopped doing it. They did what smart businesses do, and they scrapped the project. Bloomberg also claims that Spotify promised to allocate $100,000 to diversity, equity, and inclusion accessibility in the workplace. The company only spent 5% of the money. Again, the shitfucks are claiming mythical racism. Logic and reason would tell you it was a waste of resources. This is why I always say, you never attempt to appease the unappeasable. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are bad for business. Why would a company waste $100,000 on accessibility of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace? What the hell does that even mean? Do they put the diversity ramp next to the wheelchair ramp? Do they hold inclusion seminars where all white employees apologize for their fake white privilege? Are all white employees required to donate 10% of their salary to the equity jar? None of that matters. There's only one thing that matters: your value. Truth is, Jemele Hill just doesn't provide any value. Just because Jemele Hill excites lonely men on Twitter doesn't mean those same lonely men are willing to listen to her podcast. The divorce between Spotify and Jemele Hill, it further proves something that has been building for quite a while now. Normal people, we have known this for 2 years, but it's taken these major media companies a little bit longer to embrace it. The business of mythical racism is dead. 2 or 3 years ago, this was a booming business. It landed Joy Reid a spot in prime time on MSNBC, gave Tiffer the Bongo Sniffer a time slot on weekend mornings, extended Don Lemon's career at CNN when it should have been over last year. Bomani Jones built his career on the business of mythical racism. It gave Jemele Hill countless opportunities that she was just not qualified for. I'll say the same thing here that I've said about Dylan Mulvaney. All these people, they built their careers based on a gimmick. There's a reason I call it mythical racism. It's a myth. I'm not saying racism doesn't exist. It does, but the racism Jemele Hill and her colleagues exploit, it does not exist. The inevitable always happens when you build your career on a gimmick. There comes a point where it's no longer sustainable. Eventually, you have got to utilize your talent. You have to provide value. Jemele Hill is a talented writer. She is not a talented broadcaster. She is not a talented podcaster. There is absolutely nothing entertaining about Jemele Hill. After a while, looking at this fart face, it loses its comedic value. Like I said earlier, I think Jemele Hill is the favorite to dethrone Bomani Jones as the biggest, huge, embarrassing failure. I know we still have 6 months to go in the year, and I'm going to leave the voting up to you guys. But let me just summarize her list of huge, embarrassing failures. She turned the 6 p.m. Sports Center into an hour dedicated to mythical racism and displaying her severe symptoms of OMB. Orange Man bad. Failure. She hosted a show on Vice with Carrie the Cucumber Champion. Failure. Vice is a network where expectations for ratings are low. Jemele Hill, never able to make the top 150 on cable. Remember last fall when she released her memoir? How Jemele Hill leveraged fake racism into a career of collecting money that she hasn't earned. At a bookstore in the San Francisco airport, Jemele Hill left a free signed copy for one lucky birthing person. She announced it on Twitter, telling all of her lonely male followers to go grab the free signed copy. All they had to do, walk into the bookstore, pick up the book, and leave. That's it. After it sat there for a week, the store owner, he finally threw it away. After her book was published, Jemele Hill was interviewed by every mainstream media outlet. She joined the Yentas on The View in a competition to see who had the strongest mouth farts. CNN, MSNBC, print media. The promotion was endless. All of that money spent on promotion. Jemele Hill sold 5,000 books. Failure. And now her woke welfare has expired with Spotify. She's got a channel here on YouTube. Failure. I spend no money on promotion. The only promotion this channel receives is from you guys. And sometimes whichever media outlets choose to use my content for their stories. A dumbass sitting in his backyard studio has an audience 5 to 10 times the size of Jemele Hill. Her most recent video here on YouTube, 677 views in 21 hours. This channel surpassed 677 views in the time you spent watching this video. There is only one way to describe the career of Jemele Hill. Huge, embarrassing failure. I know we're only in June, but Jemele Hill, she's got to be the #1 contender to dethrone Bomani Jones, right? If you know of someone else who's been a bigger failure than Jemele Hill in 2023, let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, share the video. Keep the content ideas coming too. If you come across something, shoot me an email at btlkc84@gmail.com. I do have a serious backlog right now. I'm trying to get to everything I can. There's just so much news right now. It's hard to cover everything, but enjoy your Saturday. I will see you guys tomorrow.